Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. So, if you've watched any of my recent desk setup videos, you'll know that I'm fortunate to have two desk setups in my home office/studio. One desk uses the LG 32GQ950B, a 4K 32-inch monitor, and my main desk uses the Alienware AW3821DW, a 38-inch ultrawide monitor. Both have a maximum refresh rate of 144 Hz, both have a maximum response time of 1 millisecond, and both are IPS LCD panels. Even so, they offer distinct experiences when it comes to work, gaming, and general content consumption. So, 4K or ultrawide? Which one is for you? Let's first talk about resolution and aspect ratio. The LG 32GQ950B is a 32-inch 4K display with a max resolution of 3840 by 2160 at a standard 16:9 aspect ratio. On the other hand, the Alienware AW3821DW is a 38-inch ultrawide with a max resolution of 3840 by 1600, also known as WQHD+, which stands for Wide Quad HD+. Regular WQHD is 1440p, but the plus in this case just means you get extra vertical pixels, 1600 instead of 1440, all in a 21:9 aspect ratio. This means that both monitors have the same horizontal pixel count, but the 4K display has more vertical pixels, making it taller. Meanwhile, the ultrawide stretches those same 3840 pixels across a wider physical space, giving you more room for multitasking. But keep in mind, resolution alone does not determine how sharp a display looks. Since both of these monitors have different screen sizes, their pixel density varies, which impacts things like text clarity, fine details, and overall image sharpness, which can become especially noticeable depending on the task that you're doing. PPI, or pixels per inch, determines how tightly packed the pixels are on a display. A higher PPI simply makes things like text and other details clearer. Since 4K monitors pack more pixels into a smaller space compared to an ultrawide of the same horizontal resolution, the difference in sharpness is noticeable, especially when working with text or finer details. 4K monitors like the 32GQ950 have a PPI of around 137, while a 38-inch ultrawide monitor like the AW3821DW has a PPI of roughly 110. So effectively, you're trading sharpness for screen real estate. For tasks like reading, coding, or working with fine details, the higher PPI of 4K provides crisper text and sharper images. On the other hand, if you prioritize multitasking, the ultrawide format is better for you. However, PPI doesn't necessarily determine good color accuracy. I want to point this out specifically as this has less to do with the 4K versus ultrawide argument and more to do with the specific panel that you're using. Now, some monitors come factory calibrated with some pretty good color accuracy out of the box, while others require a bit, or a lot, of calibration in order to get things looking good. The quality of an IPS panel, and what I mean by that is that there are a number of factors involved here. For example, coverage of color spaces like DCI-P3 and sRGB, panel coatings like anti-glare coatings, and even how well the display handles uniformity, which is effectively how color and brightness are distributed across the screen. All play a role in how accurately colors will appear. Both my LG 38GQ950B, which I use in my living room setup, and the 32GQ950B are both nano IPS displays, which means that there are a layer of nanoparticles applied to the LED backlight in order to widen the color gamut. Even among IPS panels, the better IPS panels reduce things like IPS glow and improve brightness. So all of these factors contribute to how accurate and consistent a display looks, regardless of whether it's 4K or ultrawide. So at the end of the day, while resolution and PPI affects image sharpness, things like color accuracy, uniformity, and even panel coatings can affect how a display looks and performs. Let's move on to gaming. Now, The two aforementioned things of aspect ratio and pixel density are the two main factors to factor in when deciding on 4K versus ultrawide. Let's start with 4K. Now, to me, certain titles look incredible on 4K displays, especially those with high DCI-P3 coverage, and I prefer playing these games in 16:9. For example, Apex Legends is one of those games that just looks better on a 4K screen. The detail in the guns and the environments just pop on the screen, and overall feels more responsive when playing on the 32GQ950B. Playing it on an ultrawide is fun, but feels slower, if that makes any sense, even though both panels are running the game smoothly at 144Hz. Doom Eternal is the same for me. While playing it on an ultrawide is fun, playing it on a 4K monitor at a high refresh rate makes the game feel like butter to me. Graphically, it's beautiful and smooth, and even though the game supports ultrawide just fine, I prefer seeing more detail here. The Callisto Protocol is another title I prefer playing in 4K. The game's tight corridors don't really make having an ultrawide monitor necessary, but the game's lighting and visuals make having a high-resolution display fantastic to have when playing it. Pentiment, a game I think more people should know about, looks incredible on a 4K monitor with the world of Upper Bavaria popping off the screen with beautiful artwork and colors. By contrast, the game isn't even supported on ultrawide, and to me, looks washed out in comparison there. And that brings up a good point. Not all games even support ultrawide. A popular example of this is Elden Ring, which has infuriated ultrawide monitor owners all over the world with the infamous black bars at aspect ratios of 21:9 or greater. And not to pick on From Software as they make great titles, but Sekiro Shadows Die Twice does this as well with no support for ultrawide whatsoever. There are some games like Dave the Diver, which also doesn't support ultrawide, but at least shows a more tasteful sidebar art rather than leaving it pure black. For a game like Valorant, even on an ultrawide, the FOV is capped to 16:9 for competitive play. Some games like the Resident Evil 4 remake have FOV issues on ultrawide, with the camera following Leon way too closely. However, keep in mind that these FOV and other ultrawide issues, like the Elden Ring issue, have been solved by others through mods, so shout out to the mod community for all your effort and hard work. Last, and something to keep in mind, if you're using your monitor to play PS5 or Xbox games, then 4K 16:9 is your best bet, along with HDMI 2.1, as consoles are designed for 16:9 outputs. For games that do support ultrawide, however, a wider aspect ratio of 21:9 makes some of these titles feel a lot more immersive. For example, Cyberpunk on an ultrawide lets you take in the full scenic view of Night City, and wandering around its neon-lit streets makes for a pretty cinematic gaming experience versus playing it in 16:9, which feels more confined, like you're seeing the world through a narrower window. Red Dead Redemption 2 also plays fantastic on an ultrawide monitor, immersing you in the Wild West and letting you see some pretty amazing panoramic views. Racing games like F1 2024 are a lot more immersive on ultrawide panels for obvious reasons. While playing it in 16:9 is totally fine, it just doesn't capture the same sense of being the driver that an ultrawide display gives you. Large-scale FPS shooters like Battlefield 5 look better on an ultrawide in my opinion, letting you see more of the battlefield and giving you more situational awareness. A game like Ori in the Blind Forest looks amazing on an ultrawide monitor, with the wider FOV letting you see more of Nibel Forest's beautiful landscapes around you. Another thing I want to touch on are older titles that have been since remastered to support ultrawide. For example, Blood Fresh Supply was remastered in 2019 by Night Dive Studios and is fantastic to play in 21:9. Thank you, Night Dive. Duke Nukem 3D, another one of my favorite shooters, has an amazing source port called eDuke32, which was created by members of the Duke4.net community, which allows the game to be run on modern systems and gives Duke full ultrawide support on top of many other features. Night Dive Studios and Machine Games also remastered another one of my favorite shooters of all time, Quake 2, not only giving the game support for ultrawide, but improving it for modern systems in almost every conceivable way. Now, whether you think these games are better in 16:9, 21:9, or even 32:9, the point I'm trying to make here is that they do have ultra-wide support should you want it. Let's move on to productivity. Now, depending on what needs to be done, I switch between the two monitors. For example, if I'm scripting a video, reading some code documentation, or writing code in a limited number of files, then I prefer the 4K 32-inch monitor for its text clarity and overall vertical space. Likewise, if I'm focusing on color grading or creating a thumbnail, then I also prefer the 4K monitor for its higher pixel density and color accuracy. That said, if I need or want to see multiple applications, edit footage on the timeline, or work across multiple buffers in NeoVim, then of course, the ultra-wide becomes my go-to. Hey guys, Thomas from the Editing Future here. It's been a few days and I'm cleanly shaven. No, but seriously, sorry to come in at the last moment. I actually did forget to add a topic that I do think is important when considering 4K versus ultra-wide, and that is display scaling. Now, both macOS and Windows can adjust things like text and icons in order to make them easier to read, but this can create a mismatch between your screen's actual resolution and the operating system's virtual resolution. For example, if you pick an effective resolution of 2560 by 1440 on a 3840 by 2160 display, aka a 4K display, macOS might actually render that image at a higher resolution first, say 5120 by 2880, and then scale it back down. Windows similarly examines your display size and pixel density to set a default scaling level and allows you to adjust it. Either way, this keeps the UI comfortable to look at, but it can also introduce some minor visual artifacts and can slightly reduce sharpness since it's no longer a one-to-one pixel mapping. So in other words, say you have a 4K monitor, even though your monitor physically has 3840 by 2160 pixels, the operating system isn't actually using each pixel individually to draw the UI elements. It's actually drawing them at a different resolution first, and then stretching them or shrinking them down to fit the panel. By contrast, ultra-wide monitors have a lower PPI than 4K monitors, so you generally don't need to run any image scaling. In a nutshell, image scaling makes things bigger and easier to read, but you're not going to be using every last pixel for details, so it is a trade-off between clarity and usability. And it's just something to consider, at least in my opinion, when deciding on 4K versus ultra-wide. And now back to past Thomas. Here we go. So 4K or ultra-wide? Well, as you've just seen, the answer isn't really all that simple. Ultimately, it boils down to you. Are you more work focused? And if so, what kind of work do you do? Or are you more gaming focused? And if so, what kind of games do you play? Or are you like me and do a little bit of both? Just remember, the more pixels you try to drive, i.e. the resolution, and the faster you try to drive them, i.e. the refresh rate, the more powerful hardware you'll need in order to do what you want to do. Detail comes at a cost, and you'll need hardware powerful enough to support whatever type of monitor you end up choosing. Hopefully, if this is something you've wondered about, that this video has at least given you some idea on how to base your decision. At the end of the day, both have their strengths. 4K gives you that crisp, high detail experience, and ultrawide gives you that immersive, multitasking experience. Ultimately, there is no wrong choice. It's all about what works best for you and how you use your setup. That's about all I have for this one, guys. If you're still here, please remember to drop me either a 4K or ultrawide, just so I know which one you prefer, and just so I can give you a like for sticking around until the end of the video. If you like this video, please remember to hit that like button, and please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon so you know when I release new videos. I say this all the time, but doing all of those things really helps me out in growing this small channel. If this video in particular gets enough engagement, then I'll follow it up with a part 2, as I think there are more things to talk about when discussing 4K or ultrawide. I've got more tech, desk setup, and gaming content planned as usual, so please stay tuned for that. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.